This week we're talking about Ubuntu and why you probably should go ahead and update off of 24.04. There's H.264 troubles on Fedora. OBS releases the 31.1 beta. Didn't we just get 31.0? There's a 6.15 release of the kernel. The 6.16 merge window is open, and a whole lot more. You don't want to miss it, so stay tuned.
Podcasts you love
from people you trust.
This is TWiT.
This is the Untitled Linux Show, episode 205, recorded Saturday, May 31st, RHEL Spicy Edition. Hey folks, it is Saturday, and you of course knows what that means. It is time for the Untitled Linux Show. We're going to get geeky with open source and Linux and some hardware, all sorts of stuff. I've got a part of the normal crew here today. We've got Ken and we've got Rob, and we're going to get up to some fun. And Rob has a story about his second favorite operating system, and we're going to let him take it away and tell us about that.
I mean, I guess in all honesty, I do run it on my servers all the time. So as much as I like to dig on Ubuntu, you're probably not completely inaccurate on saying it's my second favorite. But, you know, all the commenting on how, you know, my digs have usually been on how not up to date they are, which is good for my servers. But you know, I like to be up to date on. I like the latest and greatest on my desktop.
Bleeding on the desktop, old and boring on the servers.
That's kind of how I like to roll. But you know, they have their LTS release. You know, their long-term support that is released every 2 years. You know, with the majority of kind of the real-world testing being done on their for those adventurous types on their 6-month interim releases. But, you know, I mean, it's not just testing, but it's kind of testing. It's kind of where a lot of the testing goes, but before they do their long-term release. But, you know, really only testing on a new system every 6 months kind of leaves a lot of development in between that, you know, could be tested on that isn't much. You know, they don't have an official testing rolling release. You know, they got Rhino. I mean, they don't have Rhino, but someone has Rhino. They spun it up if you want a rolling release. So, you know, if you want to test the up-to-minute latest and greatest releases, you can install. They have a daily ISO. But for most, you know, downloading and installing an ISO every day is probably a little extreme. You know, unless you're developing for Ubuntu, then if that's part of your job, then maybe you want to do that. But for others, you know, we have the 6 months, we have the daily, but you know, what's in between? There hasn't been anything really in between there until now. So Canonical is planning to release a monthly Ubuntu snapshot for testing and building out automation. So they're not going to go away from the 6-month interms and the 2-year LTS cadences, but complementing their testing by leveraging more automation and enhancing testing. So a quote from their announcement, it says, with their current model, failure modes are not detected until they're urgent and blocking an imminent release. The team conducts rigorous retrospectives on each release, but in my opinion, it's hard to meaningfully evolve such a process when it's only exercised every 6 months. So, and then he goes on, the monthly snapshots will create opportunities for us to test, understand, and improve that process. So the monthlies are kind of going to be deployed and use their same automation that their 6-month interims do. I believe their dailies, nightlies, whatever you call them, are you know, not quite as on par with that. So the process, it has already started with the following released and planned for Ubuntu 25.10 on the following dates. So May 29th, Snapshot 1 is already out. Then the next one, Snapshot 2 is on June 10th. Snapshot 3 is on June 15th. Snapshot 4 is on August 19th. And I guess October, they expect Ubuntu 25.10 to be out. So maybe this is an attempt to catch some of those blocking failures that have caused some releases to be delayed in the past. Though, you know, I know we've seen some where it gets released and then they hold back updating or upgrading or whatever, or the release just doesn't come on time. So, like I said, I'm not quite sure how the nightlies, maybe I don't know, the nightlies aren't accomplishing that and not catching it because it's just too frequent, I suppose, to do the vigorous testing automation that they do with the actual release. So this is going to, hopefully improve that process for them. Personally, I'd still kind of like to see an official testing rolling release so I could actually see the software as it goes. But like I said, I already use Ubuntu on my desktop anyway.
Yeah, so there's a couple of ways that they could do this. I want to make sure I understand. So when Ubuntu mints a release, so 25.04 got minted, that's a fork, right? They fork Ubuntu, and you've got the old stable becomes 25.04 and then updates to that. And then they fork it off, and you've got now a bleeding edge that's going to become 25.10. These builds are coming out of that bleeding edge fork, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. These are what's going to become 25.10.
So they're pre-releases of the next version, essentially.
Yep.
Or RC releases?
I'm sure they have releases. These are not release candidates. Definitely not release candidates. Yeah, way before that.
Think of the nightly builds.
It's basically a nightly build with.
It's
nightly
released once a month.
Yeah,
it's basically the nightly build, but utilizing the same automation that they use to release their interim build. So that way they get to test their automation, their build automation tools.
Yeah. Interesting. Oh, so it looks like they are, based on what he says here, they are actually going to give it some testing like they test a release. Is he's talking about it being it's a practice run for the big 6-month release.
Yep. So
maybe they will be a little bit more stable than an actual nightly build. Regardless, it's interesting. A step towards having an official Ubuntu rolling release, maybe?
For those that want to risk it.
I mean, you could roll with it if you want to. I'm sure there's a way to go into your Ubuntu install and tell it to jump to that bleeding edge fork every time. But
I'm a little curious how the process would work, if you did the nightly or daily, I guess they call it, but updating day after day. If you update your system every day, if you're basically keeping up with every daily ISO, and also along with the monthly, if you install Snapshot 1 and all of a sudden you keep updating, and then Snapshot 2 comes out, are you up to date with that? Is there an update process? I think
so. Yeah. Yeah, the real question is when they actually when they fork a release. So when they fork if you do that right now and then they fork 25.10, which branch are you going to take on that fork? That's the one I'm not sure about. But, what I am sure about is if you're running Ubuntu 20.04, you've got a problem on your hands. And Ken, I think, has the full scoop, as well as hopefully some options to give to people. What can we do, Ken?
For those of y'all that are on Ubuntu 20.04, you may want to say goodbye to a dear friend. And now, I'm actually still running Ubuntu Studio 20.04 based on Ubuntu 20.04. But we hear from Bobby Borisoff and Saurabh Rudra. They both wrote about Canonical no longer accepting package updates to the primary archive for Ubuntu 20.04 after this last Thursday. So this does signal the end of standard security updates and bug fixes of this version. Now, according to Bobby, Ubuntu 20.04 was initially released on March 23rd, 2020. So it's had a good 5 years run. And it did receive a standard support for that full 5 years. Now, as I said, my Lenovo ThinkCentre A63 can still receive system security updates under my Ubuntu Pro system subscription that I have. In fact, let me go ahead and show you what it's currently showing. That's me SSHing into the system and running NeoFetch. And you can see it's Ubuntu 20.04.6 LTS. This has actually been up for 2 hours because I tried updating to 22.04 and ended up having to roll back using my backup. So whatever you decide to do after this article, hearing about some options, I do recommend first backing up everything. Now, this gives, with the Ubuntu Pro subscription, it gives me access to security updates for both the main and userverse repositories, kernel live patching, and compliance tools. I could keep using Ubuntu 20.04 for another 10 years this way. No, but Serve gives you, in addition to the Ubuntu Pro subscription, 2 other options. His first recommendation, and I'm sure Jeff would agree with this, is to do a fresh install of Ubuntu 24.04 LTS so you can get all the latest packages. Personally, I don't want to rebuild my Plex media server by doing that, because that means having to rebuild it from scratch again, especially since I've got several shows that I DVR from over-the-air broadcast using my Plex media server that I'd have to try to reschedule again, and some of them are in between seasons, so that makes it a little difficult.
A little bit.
So the second recommendation is to upgrade to Ubuntu 22.04 LTS, since this will keep, in my case, my files intact. In fact, I even tried that last weekend after the last week's podcast. But Serve's article also talks you through the upgrade process, while Bobby has links to guides for upgrading from 20.04 LTS to 22.04 LTS, and then to 24.04 LTS. That sounds like a long session doing all of that. As always, again, I can't say it more often, always back up before starting either of these last 2 options. Now, even though I have Ubuntu Pro's extended security maintenance for 20.04, I am going to try to upgrade again to 22.04. And then see if I can reinstall XFCE, because the upgrade switched me to GNOME's desktop.
Oh, terrible.
Lucky you.
Oh, yes.
Just ruins the whole experience.
Especially with all the customizations I've done to my current XFCE desktop, so I can quickly go up to my panel and start certain applications from there.
Well, KDE must have still been installed. Just had to switch your session over, right?
No, it's XFCE on that one.
Oh, XFCE. Yeah, they're trying to get you off of the old, almost unsupported software.
Yep.
But yeah, it must have still been installed anyway. I assume you just had to switch your session, and you would have been there. My, I'm kind of. I like to.
When I did upgrade, I was still able to launch gpotter from the command line, as well as verify that my Plex server was still up and running. So I can do that. I just have to take the time to set up new quick links for everything that I like to have access to from the desktop, even though for all intents and purposes, I'm actually just using it as a file and media server now.
These days, I don't have any problems upgrading from one LTS to the next. Back in the day, I've had some, PHP did some major breaking things where I got stuck on, I had a server that was stuck on an old version for a while until I could get around to reprogramming those sites. But
going back to that SSH, I do want to show, if y'all can read it there. It does say system restart required because a new release 22.04 LTS is available. It says run do release upgrade to upgrade to it. I don't think I want to do that right now.
But yeah, with my web servers, I always just like to set up a new one and install fresh, because then I get all the cruft off of there that has accumulated over the couple of years. So I always like to get a nice fresh start. But as far as even backing up goes, when I just do a regular apt update at apt upgrade, I always do a snapshot before every one of those. Even though I have regular weekly backups on my web servers, I still like to do that right before, just in case, so I don't lose like half a week or whatever of whatever is on there.
Yep. All right. So what about Linux itself, the kernel? There's some interesting things going on there. And I am going to talk first off about the scheduler, one of those fun, geeky things to talk about. You may have seen this article about the uniprocessor scheduler, and the link here off to Phoronix says specifically, the big Linux patch series shakes up the scheduler code for anyone with only one CPU core. And my first thought was, oh, they're going to make it better for single core, because of course these things are still around. No, actually, it's quite the opposite. Even in embedded systems and all kinds of places, you very rarely see single CPU, single core processors, that is. Almost everything is SMP, simultaneous multiprocessing. And so Linux is the Linux devs are finally moving into this bright new future and going in and killing the scheduler code that specifically deals with the single core. Now, these old devices will still work. I mean, like, you can still run a 586 with Linux, and the kernel will work on the CPU. I think it's 586. I think that's where we're at. They killed 486, but 586 is still in there, I think. But what this does is it gets rid of all of the code specific to the single core and just lets it run on the SMP scheduler. Now, the reason that this matters is because every time somebody went to touch the scheduler, there was this like massive ifdef tree. There was ifdef spam everywhere regarding, ifdef config SMP. And so they're going in, and it sounds like they're trying to eventually only compile for config SMP. That's kind of the direction that, reading between the lines here, that's kind of the direction it seems like this is going. I don't think they're entirely there. This is just doing it for the scheduler. But it's interesting to see sort of things in the kernel moving this direction. Do either of you guys have any single core processor machines around anywhere? I'm
going to say yes. I think that Dell I've got's got a 486 in it.
But is it running? How long ago?
Any running systems? No.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've got some old systems around that are single core, but I don't think I've had one running. I've got one laptop that may be a single core. It's one of those old netbooks. I'd have to go back and look.
I don't think I've seen a single core for years.
It's
been a long time.
What happens with the virtual machine, though, if you only give it one core?
When you give a virtual machine only one core, do you go in and recompile your kernel and turn off SMP?
Of course not.
Then it's the same thing as always happened. This is for compiling without SMP turned on. Essentially, this is If so, in ifdef, that's a C and C++. In this case, it's C, not C++. Famously, it is a C preprocessor, which means that when you compile your code, the first thing it does, the first pass it does over your code, is it goes through and it evaluates all of the preprocessor directives. And so you can have preprocessors that are like, if this define exists, or if this define evaluates true, or if this define is equal to this. And so when you do compile options, those actually make it into the code as defines. And so, you can have a compile option of use SMP, and then every time one of those preprocessor statements matches, it'll do the thing. And if it doesn't match, a lot of times blocks of codes will get erased and be gone before it actually starts the real compilation.
Yeah, so this is just for compiling of the kernel. Everyone using a pre-compiled kernel with their distribution, it's
not going to change anything.
It's all the same. It's not saying if you use this, we're going to run this way. If you don't, we're going to run that way. It's just given that option to detect and compile that. You just have a single core. So
yes,
it makes sense.
Yep. So it's a good thing for the maintainability of the kernel. I don't think he said how many lines were removed as a result, but I'm sure this kicked a bunch of lines out of the kernel, which is always nice. It's always good to get rid of code. It's always a good feeling.
So that's not even going to optimize anything running wise, only optimizing compiling and minusculely. More for maintainability.
It's more for writing new code, yeah.
It's that much less code you have to wade through for logic errors.
Yep. And to figure out what it's doing to be able to make a patch. Yeah. All right. Rob has a story here, and I've got to ask you, Rob. I thought we just celebrated OBS 31.
Well, now we're going to celebrate what's coming at OBS 31.1.
Wasn't this like just days ago though that OBS 31 came out?
That's why this is a beta.
Yes, this is still just a beta at this time.
Okay, I guess it was a month ago. Time flies.
Yeah, I don't know when stuff came out. I mean, I don't know. Seems like my birthday was yesterday. I don't know if it was last month, last week. I didn't even know what day of the week it was last week. Or
I thought it was next week.
What year it was. I didn't know what year it was last week. So, I mean, like some folks over at, like Michael over at Phoronix, even though 31 just came out, you said some folks like Michael over Phoronix have been looking ahead at what is coming out in the next OBS Studios release. And, we're talking about 31.1 beta release to see what's coming. And he found some, pretty good news for Linux users. So those lucky Windows users over there have been able to enjoy multi-track video recording since release 30.2, which I have no idea when that was. But now, in the up-and-coming 31.1 release, Linux users will also be able to enjoy this feature as well. And macOS users too, but whatever, who cares? OBS Studio's multi-track feature allows managing multiple audio and video tracks simultaneously for like more advanced streaming, kind of professional studio use cases. I'm not sure I really have a use case for it, but if I really wanted to get into it, I think you could do some pretty cool things with that. So, and that's about really all I came here to talk about, because multi-track recording is I've definitely done a lot of audio, and maybe I can make some music videos with multi-track recording. I don't know, but as long as I'm here, while I'm talking about what's coming to OBS 31.1, I might as well list what else we can expect to see. Features such as V4L2 virtual camera support now coming to non-Linux environments, like our BSD siblings. It's not Linux, I know, but BSD is like a little sibling to us, or an older sibling. I don't know. And they also support for hardware accelerated browser source handling on Linux. So another thing coming to Linux, and they got some new UI options, a preview Zoom controls, and I'm not talking about the Zoom video conferencing application. I'm talking about you zoom in. So you get preview now. Support for color format space range GPU conversions, explicit sync support for Pipewire screen capturing. I'm not exactly sure what that is, but Pipewire screen capturing sounds like we're getting a lot closer to the Pipewire video stuff that we often bring up that we're looking forward to. And then, they also have the usual bug fixes that any good software has ever released. There's always bug fixes. There's a good dozen of them. Oh, and if anyone cares, there's also initial support for Windows on ARM. So those are a few things in this minor release that we can expect to see in the next OBS Studio.
Yeah, very cool. I look forward to all of it. It's neat to see the new stuff land in OBS.
And we're all OBS Studio users on this panel
Yes.
here, so it's
And I
definitely
even
something.
use the screen capture Pipewire with my version of OBS, which is 31.0.3. So that's actually been around for now. I think it's been a beta.
Mm-hmm.
But if you see there, it says properties for screen capture Pipewire.
Well, they said explicit sync support, so I wonder if that's something a little more.
It's probably going to help with synchronizing things.
One would think. It's kind of right there in the name.
Yep.
Probably.
I thought it was like where you go and do your dishes if you don't have a dishwasher.
What I'm waiting for, though, is when the virtual camera can be recognized by Pipewire.
Yes, that is what we are all waiting for. That is that is kind of the holy grail, is Pipewire output from OBS.
You can split that stream into other devices.
I've said multiple times over the years, it will be that'll be when things really get interesting. Being able to do your piping your video around, be good stuff.
Instead of having to use a third party or a cloud-based service to do it.
Indeed. All right. Well, Ken, what about using a distro specifically, something like KaOS? Is that going to be a good choice for running OBS and doing video streaming?
Well, that's a good question. I haven't tried running OBS on it, so I can't answer that one. But thankfully, Marius Nestor and Jack Wallen wrote about an independent Linux distro releasing its latest iteration that includes kernel 6.14 and KDE's Plasma 6.3.5. What are we talking about? It's KaOS. Yes, KaOS Linux 2025.05. Now, it is built on top of the latest KDE software and features Arch Linux Pacman package manager. Now, starting with this release, KaOS is finally where a default install will be Qt5 free. In other words, no more Qt5 is necessary. But if you do have some old applications that still depend on it, you can still download it from the repository. But this does allow KaOS to include KDE Gear version 25.04.1 or later, and Frameworks 6.14.0 or later, because they are both built on Qt 6.9.0. Qt 6 and Framework 6 ready applications will include Frescobaldi, Krita, Camosa, and Calligra Plan. I think I said that last one right.
Close to it, at least.
Doubt it.
The base system updates include Systemd 254.24, ZFS 2.3.2, a new toolchain based on glib 2.4.1, GStreamer 1.26.1, and Pipewire 1.4.3. Now, one of the new packages KaOS includes is Nextcloud-Client. This is an open source sync client for Nextcloud, which I think you've had as a guest on Floss Weekly, haven't you?
Mm-hmm.
So if you want more details about Nextcloud, I'd go back and review that episode of Floss Weekly.
It's been a while.
Now, KaOS does get ready to move away from X11 with SDDM 0.20.0. It's going to add the option to run the display manager in Wayland mode. As always, you can get more details, since I'm just picking out the highlights, from the two articles I've got linked in the show notes.
Yeah, interesting stuff. I wonder, when we talk about some of these little, I think of them as niche boutique distros.
I don't think this is boutique necessarily, because it's not even based on any of the standard ones.
Well, indeed, that's what I mean. It's not a remix, right? It's not Kubuntu. This is their own thing, and I always wonder with these, like, are they going to hit critical mass and really take off and be used by a whole bunch of people?
When someone else bases their distro on them, then they're going somewhere.
Then they've arrived. Yeah.
So, Rob, when are you going to base a distro on it?
I think Rob just jumps from distros to distros. I don't think it's really in his wheelhouse to make his own.
Not as much as I used to.
Then I guess the better question is, how far down your next distro to try list is it?
As a daily driver, way down. As maybe in a VM, if I try it there first and there's something intriguing about it, it might go up on my daily driver list. But I gotta see why. Why do I want to run it?
Their website looks slick. I will say that for them.
There's a reason.
Because then you can say, you've got a distro that none of us have had.
I could say, when I'm at home, I am running KaOS.
Sure. You could say that.
or you could let your wife say it.
Oh, goodness. All right. So, if you don't want to run a boutique distro and you want to run something boring, maybe even enterprise, there is an option. You can run AlmaLinux, and AlmaLinux just released version 10, which is based on Red Hat Enterprise Linux 10, although it's also based more on CentOS Stream 10. So the whole thing here is a little complicated. When CentOS went away, AlmaLinux was one of the two distros that sort of picked up the torch. And then when Red Hat made their decision to make it more difficult for downstream distros like AlmaLinux and Rocky Linux, when they made it more difficult for them to repackage the Red Hat packages, AlmaLinux opted to move to CentOS Stream as the upstream. And so this means that they are no longer bug for bug compatible with CentOS 10, with Red Hat 10, Red Hat Enterprise 10, which is potentially good and bad. So, the good thing was that you could buy a piece of hardware that was designed for Red Hat Enterprise, and drop, hardware, software, you could drop it into your local machine, and you could be pretty assured that it was going to behave the exact same way as it would in an actual enterprise Linux install. But one thing that AlmaLinux has done with this change is they'll push out fixes faster. They'll push out security fixes that, for one reason or another, Red Hat is not interested in shipping in Red Hat Enterprise Linux. And several times we've seen that. With AlmaLinux 10, there is actually another one of these changes. They call it Purple Lion, by the way. There's another one of these changes that they are making away from Red Hat Enterprise. And that is that it is going to remain, you can run AlmaLinux 10 on an x86-64 v2 processor, whereas Red Hat Enterprise Linux requires an x86-64 v3. And I really need to go back and look. I've got an old server that I got shut out of running newer CentOS and stuff on. I don't remember if that one is x86-64 v2 compatible or if that one's still on v1. One of the things that I and others have complained about is that there's not quite the there's not a really, really good technical distinction between like what makes the version 1, version 2, version 3, and version 4 of x86-64. And so it's kind of nice to see that AlmaLinux is bringing some of these old, otherwise really useful pieces of hardware forward into the future. So this is like a AMD Bulldozer era AMD Jaguar, Intel's Nehalem and Silvermont. Yeah, but there is some interesting stuff. You've also got UEFI on ARM that you can now run on AlmaLinux 10. And I'll have to try that. I've got some ARM hardware around to give it a shot and see if I can make it work. I have to grab 10 from NXVM.
And doesn't AlmaLinux 10 also add Spice?
I did see something here about Spice. Spice support is present.
Christine Hall's article actually covered that more, but it allows users to access and interact with a virtual machine's desktop environment remotely, and not just from the host server. But yeah, I don't know the story about Spice being deprecated in RHEL, because that's what I use. It's part of a libvirt, KVirt, and I thought that was all based on Spice. Not so much deprecated, just dropped in RHEL 9.
Interesting. I'll have to go look and see what they replaced it with.
Or did they?
I mean, you've got to have some way to be able to do an install. And if it's not Spice, I'm not sure what it would be. Set up an old serial console into your virtual machines?
But I've added a link to Christine Hall's article to the show notes as well. For anybody that's got the time to read. Covers some of what Jonathan touched, as well as some things you didn't actually cover.
Yeah, I'll have to look more into that with RHEL and Spice, because I don't know that story. I don't know what else going on there.
I guess you could say AlmaLinux 10 is going to be Red Hat Enterprise Linux with Spice.
Spicy Edition? It's RHEL Spicy Edition? Goodness. Well, there's some spiciness going on Fedora with H.264. Or that's what Rob says. I don't know if I believe him. Are we safe? Is H.264 in the room with you right now, Rob? It probably is. It's probably what we're all streaming with.
Oh, I brought this here for you to defend. I mean, Fedora is a pretty great distribution, but when I find a flaw in the distro, I'm going to bring it to the show to rib on Jonathan's favorite distro. Fedora tends to keep, one of the things about Fedora is they tend to keep proprietary things off of the distro, like the H.264 codec. But 9 years ago, they implemented, and this was in 2016 also. I know what year it is now. It's 9 years ago. They implemented an easy way to bring basic H.264 support back to Fedora, utilizing Cisco's open source Open H.264 project. Over the past few months, Fedora and Open H.264 users have been a little stuck with an out-of-date and vulnerable version of Open H.264. Cisco's Open H.264 has a high severity. It's 8.6 out of 10 on the CVE scale vulnerability. This vulnerability, ranking up there right on the very high severity spots, is causing some frustration, and at least for some of the issues or users online. The issue is that the decoding functions of the Open H.264 codec library could allow a remote, unauthenticated attacker to trigger a heap overflow of the system. The CVE was made public in February and fixed by Open H.264 version 2.6. But it appears the Cisco repository for Fedora is a little stuck. Fedora builds have solved this issue, and they were sent to Cisco 2 months ago. But it seems Cisco has been a little slow on the uptake. There's been some back and forth if you go and look in it to follow down the trail. But there's a link to this CVE tracker with people kind of discussing if they have to rebuild it with a different ABI and all this stuff. But and they've been having a little bit of trouble getting a response from Cisco. And looking at this chain, it looks like they sent it in, submit it, one here, not the back. About a month later, they'd say, "Oh, blah blah blah, put your stuff in here, and this is how you can submit it." And a month later, nothing. And so, there were some promising updates a few weeks ago, but it seems we're still waiting for Cisco to update their repo. It looks like if they update to, I think it's 2.5.1, it would be good. If anyone wants to dig into the CVE, it's CVE 2025-27091. But Fedora users right now, I think they got to be getting close. It sure seems like when you follow it down, like they just get real close. Hopefully soon. But last I knew, I don't know. You know what version you're running, Jonathan? Or we still have to wait.
I can find out. I can SSH to that machine. You know what the actual problem here is, though, right? Like the root cause as to why all this is broken.
Communications.
Cisco's a big corporation, and they don't work well with open source.
There's a more fundamental issue even than that.
One word: communications.
Nope, more fundamental than that, actually.
You can't get more fundamental than communications.
Software patents.
Oh, you're talking legalese.
That is why OpenH.264 is a Cisco thing, and why the Fedora people can't just fix it and update it.
Well, yeah, right.
It's because H.264 is a patent encumbered video codec, and MPEG-LA, those wonderful people, have a patent portfolio on it, and so every time somebody uses it, or I probably owe them a few cents just for saying the name of it so many times here on the show. They have a patent portfolio for it, and they charge people for using it. And Cisco, Cisco are the good guys here. At least they were, in that they said, look, we'll license it. We'll pay for the license. We will ship a binary, and people can just pick up this binary, and it will go under our account, and we'll just take care of it. That's because they wanted, they were working on WebRTC at the time, I think is what it was. And so they wanted everybody to be able to use H.264 and WebRTC. And so they made all of this available and picked up the tab for it for people on Linux and Firefox and all kinds of places to use it.
Yeah, it's definitely not Fedora's fault or really anything they could do except for push Cisco to update, which they've been doing from what I've been reading down that thread.
Yep.
But the only fault of them, well, it's not a fault of them, I guess, is just making that they're being forced because of their practices to use this one from Cisco, the open one.
It also comes down to what our patent office is allowing to be patented.
Yes, it is because people in the United States don't understand that they are allowing you to patent math, and that's not a good idea. Yeah.
Especially if you want to say 1 + 1 = 3 and patent that. Then you're going to have problems later.
It's a little different, but yeah. Yes, software patents are the patenting of math.
That was the issue, but I believe now, I'm not sure when, but I believe at least in the United States, the H.264 patent has expired.
The MP3 patents have expired. Pretty sure the H.264s have not. The total amount of time that you have to wait for so there's two things. One, the total amount of time you have to wait for patents to expire is like 20 years because of submarine patents. And that's where someone invents something and then fails to patent it for like the first 7 years. And then they can bring that invention up and patent it. And two, H.264 has been added onto multiple times because you have like the base profile and then the main profile, and then there's H.264 Plus. And every time one of those things got added onto it and sort of got glommed onto the standard, well, that's new code. Therefore, it's potentially accessible for new patents. So the original H.264 may have, but the last time I looked, there were still... Fedora was not willing to compile it themselves for that particular reason.
Yeah, what I'm seeing is it's open, and here I'm seeing on open.
Some expired in 2023. Looks like there's going to be some that expire next year. but there's some others that are going to expire after that.
Yeah, and Cisco makes the source and binary versions available. The source code is available, so users, so that an implementation of H.264 is available for the community to use across. And that's on openh264.org that I'm reading this in their FAQ section, FAQ.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right. Well, let's see. What about Armbian? Is it time for Armbian? I think it's time for Armbian.
I hope so. Because this week, Marius Nestor also wrote about the release of Armbian 25.5. This latest update enhances performance, security, and hardware compatibility for a variety of ARM-based single-board computers. Armbian 25.5 introduces support for new single-board computers such as the Banana Pi M2 Plus, BeagleBone, I'm assuming that's AI-64, or is it AL64?
I think it's AI-64.
BeaglePlay, TI's SK-AM69, MediaTek Genio family, Radza NIO 12L, that rolls off the tongue, Qualcomm Robotics RB5, Radza QB-A5E. Now here's an interesting title, Smart AM40, and then there's Pocket Beagle 2. Now, it introduces support for Linux kernel 6.14 on the Edge branch of the Rockchip 64 devices. And you can now build clean mainline kernels with configurable kernel patching. Armbian 25.5 adds the latest U-boot and firmware updates to improve boot and peripheral support, improves HDMI and audio support for Rockchip RK3588 devices, and improves EFI partition and ButterFS subvolume support for more flexible system boot and layout. The last thing that I will mention is that Armbian 25.5 updates the application library to allow users to deploy popular self-hosted applications directly from Armbian-config, including Home Assistant, Sterling PDF, Navidrome, Grafana, and NetData in clean and isolated environments. As always, go ahead if you want more details and read Marius's article. I've got it linked through the show notes.
Yeah, so trying to run Linux on these little embedded devices, the SBCs, for the vast majority of them is just pain and suffering. It is a terrible experience. One of the reasons the Raspberry Pi is so popular is because the Raspberry Pi engineers intentionally made it not a terrible, painful experience. That is one of the main things it has going for it.
Now, just to be clear, it's not just running Linux; it's really running anything on them. That's
you just on most of these devices, that is the only game in town. You cannot run anything else. Like BSD will not run on a bunch of these. Windows will definitely not run on a bunch of these. A few of them it will, but a lot of them it doesn't. And part of the reason for that is because like the boot stack is U-boot. And it's a proprietary, or not proprietary, but it's a fork of U-boot that maybe nobody has ever pushed upstream. And there's a decent chance that these things don't have any permanent flash to install U-boot to. And so to install Linux on it, you've got to compile this really weird U-boot thing. You've got to then compile a Linux kernel that's some terrible ancient vendor fork. And it's just nuts to do it. I've done it on several of these devices. I've gotten excited over several single board computer devices, and then been very disappointed by the amount of work it took. All that to say, the guys at Raspbian are doing the work and actually do really, really good work making a lot of this work. Making this Linux distro work on many, many of these boards. And so particularly if Debian is something you want to run, then man, go with this. Go with Armbian.
And what was interesting when I was researching this article is that the Armbian team was also received the Nextbox Hero Award this year.
Nextbox Hero?
Netbox Hero
Netbox
Award
Hero. Ah, ha, ha.
by Netbox Labs.
I'm not sure what Netbox Labs is, but
Do they make netboxes?
the world's platform for network and infrastructure management. Yes, they make netboxes. It's a lab that makes netboxes. There you go.
I told you. I knew it.
Rob called it. Yeah. All right. Let's see. Let's talk briefly about As the Kernel Turns. We're turning, in this case, from 6.15 to 6.16. And there's a couple of interesting things to cover. Not in great detail, but just in passing. 6.15 did release on the 25th, May 25th. There's the normal hardware improvements, security fixes, all of that good stuff. More Rust. People have been pointing out more Rust in the kernel is happening. Bcache is continuing to get more and more mature and is not quite as scary to run anymore. There's some firmware, there's some subsystem things going on. Interestingly, the Apple Silicon work is continuing, even with one of their maintainers retiring. They're managing to continue on. All kinds of interesting stuff in 6.15. But we tend to look forward here and look at 6.16, and it's got some really interesting things in it too, like the really stupendous performance enhancement for ext4, everybody's favorite, almost old file system at this point. We know that ButterFS and Bcachefs are the new shiny ones, but if you really want your data to stick around, ext4 or XFS are good options to go with. But there's some interesting things coming in ext4 that in the right workloads is apparently going to give you like a 37% improvement when you're doing large sequential I/O, which 37% improvement on file system is pretty dang impressive. There are, of course, other things going on in the 6.16 kernel, hardware enablement. AMD GPU is adding the user mode queues. We talked briefly about that a couple of weeks ago. I think that is the idea that a full screened game can just skip your window manager and all of that and talk directly to the GPU. Should end up with a bit faster frame rates, lower CPU usage, all of those things. Lots of stuff going on in there. We will link to it. And then there was one more that sort of really caught my eye in this, and that is Radeon Software. That is AMD's sort of official support for their video cards. Radeon Software for Linux is dropping the proprietary OpenGL/Vulkan drivers, which with the OpenGL drivers, it's not terribly surprising. The proprietary Vulkan drivers, those are not that old. Only been around for a few years. But with the next major Radeon Software for Linux release, all of that's going to go away. It's going to be open source or bust for Radeon. And that's really interesting to me. It's really pretty fascinating that we've come so far so quickly with AMD and their video card drivers, the open source drivers. I remember when it was bad trying to run the open source drivers for AMD. Very similar to how it is still for NVIDIA. It's not a great experience to run the Nouveau drivers. But we've come a long ways since then. And interestingly, Mesa RADV is it's the community Vulkan driver. It's the unofficial, and it is now about to become the official Vulkan driver. And so that's cool. That's neat. Likely to see a bunch of things land in that now that hopefully the AMD engineers will actually start working on that. But yeah, neat stuff, cool stuff. If you're running AMD, like hopefully most of us are. I only know one guy that's running NVIDIA on his Linux machine.
And we didn't allow him on the show today.
Yeah, we kicked him off. That's why.
But yeah,
I don't think we kicked him off. I just think he had a problem with it.
That's what it is. He is at home right now trying to get his NVIDIA drivers to work. That's where Jeff is.
I thought you meant he had a problem with us talking about how good AMD was, but even though he's given some AMD love lately.
Oh, Jeff said several times that if he builds another machine, he's going to put an AMD card in it.
Yeah,
Just
it's interesting.
ease of use.
Yeah,
It's interesting that it sounds like they believe that the open source OpenGL driver is good enough or better that there's just no point in trying their proprietary anymore.
Yeah.
That's the way it all should be.
What I really found interesting from Michael's article is that the release note mentions AMD AMF will also no longer be included, with users encouraged instead to target the video acceleration API within Mesa.
Yeah, let's hope that gets some love too. It's much better than it used to be. VA API it crashes less. It's less likely to take your desktop down all the way now. Yeah, I'm real happy to see AMD sort of washing its hands of their old proprietary stuff and embracing the things that are out there as open source.
It's more efficient. They
sure
get some free assistance with keeping it, improving it.
Yep.
Team red, I think. I get confused with the colors green and red, but I believe red is NVIDIA. Team red needs to...
No, other way around.
I got it backwards?
You got it backwards.
I'm going to stop using colors. Team NVIDIA needs to take some cues from AMD, I think, here.
Yeah, so here's what you do. When you Google NVIDIA, you see a logo that pops up. That one's green. When you Google AMD, you see a logo pop up, and that one's black and white, which is not terribly helpful.
I was picturing a green AMD in my head.
No, so Team Red came from the old ATI. ATI had the red logo.
Yeah, there's a green NVIDIA logo right there. Huh. I don't know.
And Intel is non-existent now.
What's that?
Intel is non-existent now as far as graphic drivers.
I mean, they would be Team Blue. No, so actually Intel ran open source graphics drivers way before either of the others did. Intel actually sort of was the groundbreaker there. They kind of were the pioneers of this. Their video cards built into their CPUs were, so the integrated GPU built into all those Intel CPUs were never amazing. You could run a desktop on it, but you didn't want a game on it. They're getting better. Didn't Intel just recently release announce at least another Battle Mage card? I'm pretty sure they did.
I thought they were still trying to work on the on their GPUs on the what's the word I'm looking for?
They're discrete GPUs.
Discrete.
Yep. It is. I want to say they're real interesting as kind of a low mid level, and really good if you want to do like on the fly video re-encoding. That's something they're particularly really good at.
Yeah, their Intel Arc is their thing that they're still working on.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I've never used one. I don't really know anyone who does, but I keep hearing that they keep getting better and better, whatever that means, from people I don't know. But
yep, absolutely.
So
all right.
Which graphics company you think will be able to support multiple streams with their hardware first?
What do you mean? Like encoding
video streams?
Re-encoding multiple streams at the same time?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you can do that now with several of them. Because I know that's something that we were doing with ZoneMinder, is trying to use the GPU to encode video streams, and I think that was working. It's challenging, right? Like you run into hardware limitations trying to move that many pixels around at the same time, but a lot of them can do it in one way or another. So, all right, shall we cover some command line tips?
What else do we got to do?
I'm a little scared about Rob's tip. A little nervous about this one, man. I'm not sure which direction to go.
Echo one?
Yeah. Rob's got P.
Yes. So I am going to talk about P this time. I'm continuing on my More Util series. I think this is going to be my last one in the More Util series before I go on to something. And I am finishing with a good one. P, spelled P-E-E. So P is similar to T, as in T-E-E, which I realized we have not talked about the command T yet. So I'll have to maybe bring that up next. It's once you learn about P, T is going to be very similar. So I'm just going to talk about now. What T does is it takes a standard input. So you pipe something to it, the standard input, and it splits it into a standard output and a file. The Linux P command will split your stream into 2 or more streams, pun intended. So what you can do is you can pipe a standard input into P, and it will split it and act upon it as many times as you want. So I'm going to do a little example here. For those watching on my screen, I have the command echo space, quote, Linux is fun, quote, or double quote, or whatever. And then I have that piped to P, and then I'm running 3 commands after P. So it's going to split this into 3 streams. So it's P space, single quote, cat, redirect into file 1.txt, single quote, space, and then I have rev, which is reverse. I have that redirecting into file 2.txt, and then I have space, single quote, WCU, so word count, and I am redirecting that into file word count.txt. So when I run that, I mean, you don't see anything because I didn't output anything to the stream, to the stream, I guess. So now I have these 3 files. So if I look at them, file 1 has it just catted into there, so it's Linux is fun. File 2 has it's just reverse. It's Linux is fun backwards. And then if I do cat word count, so it's split then. So you can act upon it multiple times. This is just for example here, but you could do a lot more useful things if you want to run a command, take its output, put it into a log file, and then act upon it at the same time, act upon it somewhere else, and whatever else you do. I'm going to do another one here. Echo, double quote, ULS is the best, double quote, piping that to P, and then I'm just running, so P space cat, space rev, space cat, do that, and it's just going to spit that all out on the screen. It's just standard output. You could see that it didn't actually do it in the order because the very first thing that popped out on my standard output is the reversed one. Apparently that's faster than cat. I don't know how that worked like that, but every time I've done it, that's the one that popped up first. But yeah, I don't know. I could maybe do a whole bunch more and
that's cool.
See what happens. But
try putting rev at the very end and after all these cats.
Yeah, so this time I did a whole bunch of cats, cat rev, cat rev, and it
did it in the same order.
It did it in order that I put it out. So I don't know, but it's not something that really order would likely matter unless you're acting on the same file.
Yeah, I was going to say, if your order matters, then you have a logical bug in what you're doing.
If your order matters, you want to use one of the commands that I gave you a few weeks ago, which would be, I don't remember, but I know there's something.
It's in the notes. Go look.
It's in the notes. I know there's something here. I just can't quite place what the command is. But yeah, there you go. We're talking about P today.
All right, Ken, let's talk about Pipewire and what are we doing with the Pipewire CLI today?
We're going to destroy some global objects today.
Ooh.
It's a very simple command, but it does take, to demonstrate it, a bit of a setup. Are you able to read my terminals here?
I can, yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to launch pwtop first. We've got that launched over in the top left terminal.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to go ahead and go into the PW command line interpreter over here, so I can do it from within it. Now I'm going to go ahead and list my nodes. And the one in particular that I'm looking for is the freewheel driver node. It's ID 30. In fact, you get that from the top. But over here, you can see information about it. I could have even done it this way by just using the info command with the 30 from a couple of weeks ago. And that's all the data that you have about it. So I'm going to destroy 30. That's all it takes. And you saw in the PWDOP, it updated so that it's no longer listed. And if I do an info 30, it's no longer there. But the good news is there is a way to get that back without having to create it all over again. In the bottom right, and this is why I don't have myself in the my video feed at the moment, is so you can see this.
We're all thankful for that. Thank you.
And to set Rob up for that. But I've got a system command that will let you restart Pipewire, as well as give you the last 10 lines from your journal control so you can see what it's doing. Now you notice that it closed the Pipewire command line interpreter and PWTop both. So let's go ahead and run that. And you'll see that the freewheel driver's back because it read it from the config files when it restarted.
Nice.
So it's not permanent.
It's not permanent. I like it. Very good. Being able to get rid of stuff is useful.
Especially if you're wanting to play around and see what effect removing something has.
Yep. So I've got a quick one, and that is disown. And this is for a very particular issue that I don't know, you might find it useful. So it's for if you have launched a job in the background, but you want the job to continue even after you close the terminal. And so you don't want the job to receive like a SIG-HUP, the hang-up signal, or something when you close the terminal or leave the SSH session. There is actually a command to tell it to continue running even though it is no longer talking to a terminal. And that is the disown command. This works with the jobs command. So jobs-L will list the background jobs. And then disown, you can specify a job number, or you can use disown-A, and it will disown all of the background jobs. I'm not sure how many people use background jobs in Linux anymore, since tmux and screen are so popular and usable. But if you do, and you find yourself in this position where I started a background job and I've got to close the terminal, disown is the way to do it. It'll make it run sort of off in the ether, not connected to your terminal anymore. And then it'll be able to finish back there in the far background where you want it.
Sometimes I have accidentally put jobs in the background.
Yeah.
And then usually I just bring them back to the foreground. But I guess if I didn't want, and then kill it, if that's what I wanted to do. But I guess I could just skip that step and just kill it, disown it.
There's times when I'll launch a graphical user application from the command line.
That's true.
And I'll put it into the background so that I can continue typing in the command line.
You might want to close that command line terminal, and disown is the way to do it. Yeah. Yeah. So Rob, when you disown it, it doesn't kill it. It leaves it running.
Oh.
It just totally detaches from your terminal.
But then there's no way to get back to it?
Not without something like reptir.
Yeah. So.
Yep.
So I guess I'm gonna just disown my job and not kill it.
It's probably a good idea. All right.
Good advice.
Yeah, good advice. All right. We'll let each of the guys plug whatever they would like to, and Ken gets to go first. Ken, get the last word or plug whatever you want to.
In the show notes, I've got a link to an article by Michael Larabelle. It's about VirtualBox 7.2 beta bringing Windows 11 ARM support. And you've got the source code on GitHub.
Very cool.
Yeah, I found it an interesting article.
Neat. I've not run VirtualBox for a long time, but that was my VM of choice for a while. All right, Rob.
I too have seen that article. Since it was about Windows, I didn't bring it to a Linux show. But anyway, that's beside the point. We're talking about me here, all me. And if you want more of me, you can come find me. My website, robertpcampbell.com. On that website, you can connect with me. My LinkedIn, my Twitter, my Blue Sky. I saw somebody in the Discord say today that they have Blue Sky, so they're not going to connect on Mastodon, but I have Blue Sky right there. Blue Sky, you can connect on there. And if you have Mastodon, have Mastodon. And if you want to donate $5 increments for coffees, you can click there and donate a coffee to me. Or if you want, you could donate a coffee, put it in the notes, donate for one of these other fine gentlemen on the show, and just make sure to note it. And eventually here, I plan to meet up with them and give them all the money I owe them.
He's just going to meet up with us and throw coffees at us. He's be like holding one of those trays with 4 coffees in it. Hey guys, here you go. Whoosh.
Coffee. I'll just bring a whole package of ground coffees. Well, this should cover it.
Yeah, I foresee it happening. All right, thank you guys for being here. Appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
Always.
Yeah. All right. If you want to find more of me, there's, of course, Hackaday. That is where Floss Weekly is at. And my security column goes live there Friday mornings. Other than that, we appreciate everybody that's here. We appreciate those on Club TWiT. If you're not and you want access to the unencumbered, the advertisement unencumbered version of the shows, you can get it at Club TWiT. It's about the price of one of those cups of coffee that Rob owes us per month, somewhere between 1 and 2 cups of coffee. Anyway, if you're there, we appreciate it. And if not, you ought to think about it. But we appreciate everybody that is here, that watches, that listens, that gets us live and on the download. And we will be back. We will see you next week with another episode of the Untitled Linux Show.
Hey, buddy, are you a geek? Are you a tech enthusiast? Then I would love to invite you to join a tech community like no other. You can gain exclusive access to our incomparable quality tech content with Club TWiT. As a member, you'll enjoy all TWiT TV shows ad-free, plus access private video feeds for insider shows like iOS Today, Home Theater Geeks, and so much more. Dive into the members-only TWiT Plus bonus feed for behind-the-scenes content, club discussions, and special events. But here's the best perk. Join our incredible Discord community to watch live show productions, chat with hosts, and participate in exclusive members-only activities. It's your backstage pass to the world of TWiT. Whether you're a tech enthusiast or a lifelong learner, Club TWiT elevates your knowledge while entertaining your interests. Get 2 weeks free when you sign up now and unlock unparalleled access at twit.tv/clubtwit. That's twit.tv/clubtwit. And from the bottom of my heart, thank you and welcome to the club.